Less than a week after Xi Jinping rolled out the red carpet for US President Donald Trump, the Chinese leader is hosting another guest of honor, and this time it's a close ally. Russian President Vladimir Putin is set to arrive in the Chinese capital Tuesday for a state visit clearly calibrated to show Beijing and Moscow's alignment in the face of global geopolitical upheaval.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has hailed Moscow and Beijing's deepening ties as a stabilizing force on the world stage ahead of talks with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. In an address ahead of a two-day visit to China that begins on Tuesday, Putin said, "Moscow and Beijing do not wish to align against any other country, but work together for peace and universal prosperity."
Some constitutions die by coup. Others are buried quietly, clause by clause, beneath the respectable cover of parliamentary arithmetic. Pakistan's constitution is, we are told, rigid. Article 239 demands that any amendment be passed by a two-thirds majority of the total membership of each House of Parliament. Where provincial boundaries are touched, the relevant assembly must agree by the same margin. This is supposed to be the great lock on the constitutional door, protection against temporary passions, executive overreach, and rulers who cannot resist rewriting the rules of the game.
Lahore. A newly married woman who was allegedly set on fire by her in-laws 2 days ago succumbed to her critical burns at Nishtar Hospital, Multan, on Monday. The young woman Fuzia, 28, a resident of Jatoy Tehsil, had suffered critical burns at her house 2 days ago under mysterious circumstances. Lahore. The University of Health Sciences, UHS, on Monday launched the first phase of a 4-part capacity building program in collaboration with the UNICEF aimed at incorporating nutrition and child health interventions into the MBBS curriculum across Punjab. The initiative began with a 3-day training workshop on community-based management of acute malnutrition, SAMAM.
Islamabad. The federal government asked the provinces on Monday to increase their revenue contribution by at least Rs 400 billion, nearly 40% of their existing share, in the coming fiscal year through more effective collection strategies in agriculture, property and services to remain in the good books of the International Monetary Fund, IMF. At a consultative meeting with provincial finance ministers, Finance Minister Muhammad Aurangzeb conveyed the IMF's deep satisfaction over the robust fiscal performance of both the 4 provinces and the centre during the current fiscal year.
After military build-up in Middle East, Trump announces decision to hold off attack planned for Tuesday at Gulf states' request. Esmail Bakaei confirms exchanges through Pakistan continue. Iranian media claims Washington showing some flexibility. Persian Gulf Strait Authority formed to oversee traffic through Hormuz. Iran claims targeting militias in Iraq, Tehran, Washington. Hours after Iran said it had responded to a new US proposal aimed at ending the war, President Donald Trump said that he had decided to hold off a planned attack at the request of Gulf leaders.
The Permanent Court of Arbitration's supplemental award on Islamabad's decade-old petition challenging the design specifications of 2 Indian hydropower projects on rivers allocated to Pakistan under the Indus Waters Treaty is a definitive affirmation of the supremacy of international law over unilateral state actions. It places India in an increasingly untenable position, legally, diplomatically, and perhaps important morally. The ruling removes whatever ambiguity India has been trying to exploit. By reaffirming that the IWT remains binding on both parties and that neither can unilaterally suspend it, the decision closes the door on India's irrational position that it can arbitrarily hold the treaty in abeyance. 2 teenage gunmen opened fire on Monday at the Islamic Center of San Diego, California, killing a security guard and 2 other men outside the mosque before the suspects were found dead, apparently from self-inflicted gunshot wounds. Police said San Diego Police Chief Scott Wall said local law enforcement and the FBI were investigating the attack on the largest mosque in San Diego County as a hate crime.
3 people have been killed in a shooting at a mosque in San Diego, California, which officials believe was perpetrated by two teenage attackers. The shooting took place on Monday morning as officers were investigating a call about a possibly suicidal teen who had run away from home.
In the northwest corner of the United States, Oregon has fostered a reputation as a left-wing stronghold. Since the 1980s, the Beaver State has consistently elected Democrats in most of its statewide races. But even in a comfortably blue state like Oregon, the fight to hold on to political power can be competitive. The United States has said it will not take part in a joint board for continental defence with Canada, depicting the country as failing to live up to its defence obligations. On Monday, US Undersecretary of Defence Elbridge Colby wrote on social media that his department would halt its involvement in the Permanent Joint Board on Defence to recess the forum's benefits.
At a rally in a parking lot outside his campaign headquarters in Florence, Kentucky, on Saturday, Congressman Thomas Massie said that the Republican politicians who joined him had made a brave choice. "I'm sure they'll be punished for coming here today," he said.
As dawn breaks, hundreds of men gather at a dusty square in Chagcharan, the capital of Ghor province in Afghanistan. They line the roadside, hoping someone will come along offering any work. It will determine whether their families eat that day.
Alabama is one of the several states in the United States heading to the polls on Tuesday for primary elections. But this primary season has an unexpected hiccup for voters in the deep red southern state. Some may have to return to the ballot box in a few months.
Neymar has made Brazil's World Cup squad, a selection many local analysts and former footballers deemed unlikely only days ago. The 34-year-old is Brazil's all-time top goal scorer with 79, but has struggled to return to top fitness since he tore his left ACL in October 2023.
Arsenal are on the brink of ending a 22-year wait to win the Premier League after beating Burnley 1-0 to open up a 5-point lead at the top. Kai Havertz headed in the only goal on Monday, but was also lucky to avoid a second-half red card that could have swung the title race back in Manchester City's favour. US President Donald Trump has announced that he is delaying a planned attack on Iran, which was scheduled for tomorrow, after appeals from Qatar, Saudi Arabia and the UAE to allow for more talks. Al Jazeera's Alan Fisher breaks down what Trump said.
Bolivian security forces have clashed with followers of ex-President Evo Morales as they marched into the capital as part of a nationwide protest movement fueled by the nation's worst economic crisis in a generation. After a 6-day march through the Andes, thousands of maramites and slingshots, some converged on the capital dynamite sticks La Paz on Monday, where they were met by riot police.
Pep Guardiola will leave Manchester City after a decade in charge, according to widespread reports, bringing to our close one of the most successful spells in Premier League history. Former Chelsea boss Enzo Maresca, who led the Blues to FIFA Club World Cup victory last year, is expected to replace him.
Drug discovery is one of the most expensive failures in modern industry. Finding a single viable molecule can take a decade and cost billions, and most candidates still don't make it. A generation of AI startups has promised to fix that. Most have made the problem less painful for researchers, who are already technically sophisticated enough to use the tools. But Sandbox AQ thinks the bottleneck isn't the models, it's the interface.
A worker died at SpaceX's Starbase launch site in South Texas on Friday, and the Occupational Health and Safety Administration, OSHA, has opened an investigation. The San Antonio Express News reported Monday that the unidentified victim died at around 4:17 a.m. local time on May 15, citing OSHA and local officials. The Wall Street Journal later reported that the county sheriff confirmed to the outlet that a worker died. OSHA confirmed to TechCrunch that it is investigating the apparent accident.
At least 4 people have been killed and 30 injured in Kenya amid nationwide protests over sharply rising fuel prices. At least 348 people were arrested on Monday, according to Interior Minister Kipchumba Murkomen, as people gathered in the streets to show support for a nationwide public transport strike. United States President Donald Trump has announced he will postpone a scheduled attack against Iran at the request of regional leaders in the Middle East. The reversal, he said, came in light of the fact that serious negotiations are now taking place.
The race pitting a candidate endorsed by President Donald Trump against Congressman Thomas Massie, a rare Republican critic of Israel, has become the most expensive House of Representatives primary contest in the history of the United States. The avalanche of spending, totaling more than 34 mitters by Monday, according to official records, highlights the significance of the elections that could oust one of the few Republican opponents to the war with Iran. Cuba has announced that the country is nearly out of fuel following months of increasing pressure from Washington. The US cut off oil shipments from Venezuela to Cuba, then imposed a near-total oil blockade.
The administration of United States President Donald Trump has moved to dismiss criminal fraud charges against Indian billionaire Gautam in a case where he is accused of bribing Indian officials for as much as 265 meters to secure contracts and lying to US investors to land a solar energy project in India, allegations that his company has longed. The case after Adani pledged by the US Department of Justice, DJ Adani, pledged a $10 BN investment in the US.
US President Donald Trump has said he is holding off a military attack on Iran planned for Tuesday at the request of Gulf states as serious negotiations are now taking place. In a post on Truth Social, he said he had been asked to do so by the leaders of Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. Iranian human rights activist and 2023 Nobel Peace Prize, Narges Mohammadi has returned to her home after being discharged from hospital. Her foundation said Mohammadi, 54, was released from Pars Hospital in Tehran on Sunday, the Narges Foundation said on Monday. She was transferred from prison to a hospital in early May after she had 2 episodes of loss of consciousness and a severe cardiac crisis. Palestinian group Fatah concluded its 8th General Conference late Saturday, but the results of the elections of the group's leadership bodies, the Central Committee and Revolutionary Council, were not announced until Monday afternoon. The delay compelled Wael Lafi, the head of the Elections Committee in the General Conference, who is also the legal advisor of the Palestinian president, to defend the process and delay even before convening questions about membership, funding, and the general political direction of the group, which dominates the Palestinian Authority, overshadowed preparations for the General Conference.